I had somebody recognize me once for my voice, and I started getting that feeling of, oh, wow, this is cool. We were at a playground with the kids, and my wife and I were talking, and there were a couple of moms playing with their kids. They had a play date, and they overheard me talking, and one of them said, I recognize your voice. Now, to have that happen is rare to begin with, and to have it be a female was odd, because generally the people who are listening to sports radio, it's a male dominated audience. Sure. For the most part. So now I'm really confused because she has recognized my voice. And I said, what? And we got to talking, and the reason she recognized my voice is I had gone to a town meeting about a week and a half earlier and made a couple of comments at the town hearing, which then aired on local community access TV in town. And that is where she recognized my voice from. Not from ESPN. And talk about getting that high that you mentioned and all of a sudden being shot back down to earth. And you're like, oh, okay. She remembered me from a kindergarten discussion at the local town board meeting. And it gets to the point of one thing that I have grown into as an adult and having a family is that, yes, I work at ESPN, but it's not who I am. And so there's all these little instances that remind you that that's what I do, it's not who I am. And so when somebody recognizes you from, a discussion about what the town should do with kindergarten, that's a part of it, or whether it's youth coaching or just all these different aspects of your life, your church, there's all these things that meld together that make up who you are. And to that end, I always think about it that ESPN is smack dab in the middle of the state of Connecticut. Mm. And unlike other networks that might be in New York or Los Angeles or Chicago or Dallas, we're in central Connecticut. And so when I walk out the door at the end of the show and I get in my car, I'm in suburban Connecticut. Right. Here you come out of the worldwide leader in sports, this huge network, and you're just in suburban Connecticut, and it's two totally different worlds. But it's a great feeling.
I kind of wonder, do you feel like more who you are is actually the youth sports and the guy who speaks up at the local kindergarten meeting and the guy, like you're probably more likely to be recognized in the grocery store for just being a guy around town than you are for ESPN.
That's absolutely true, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of what I do professionally. I wouldn't trade a day of it, and I started at ESPN in 1996, so it's been over 2 decades, and I absolutely love it. And having the show on at night when I'm on gives me the opportunity to be really involved in the community, whether it's at the elementary schools when the kids were growing up, volunteering there, or being a sports coach, for soccer, basketball, softball, baseball, you name the sport, and I was involved with the kids. And because of the hours that I do work, it really opened up the door to be able to do those kind of things, which, yes, has, I think, impacted a lot of the kids that we've coached over the years. And it's cool to have that impact on people one-on-one, because when you're doing radio, you're talking one-on-one, air quotes, to somebody, even though you're going out over 500 some odd regular radio stations, Sirius XM, the app, whatever the medium is that ESPN is going out over, and you're talking to multiple people at one time, but it's still a very one-on-one, and it's a very personal relationship. If you're listening to the radio or this podcast, it's a one-on-one discussion that we're having, and yet it's for the masses. But I never see those masses. Whereas when you're involved in the community, regardless of what it is, youth sports, whatever, there's that personal connection that you're having with somebody that can grow over the years, and it's a fantastic feeling when you see somebody develop into a young adult.
Do your kids think it's cool what you do?
Yes. And here's a good story, because every year ESPN has a company picnic, and what ESPN does, and it's a fantastic event. There's an amusement park in the center of Connecticut, which happens to be right across the street from ESPN. It's called Lake Cowpounds, and it goes back hundreds of years. It's an ancient park, but it's fun. ESPN invites all its employees and their families to spend a day there at the end of summer, and it's only ESPN employees. It's a tremendous event. Our kids love it. One of the first times that I can remember taking the kids there, when they were cognizant of what was going on around them, we were getting out of the car, we're putting sunscreen on them in the back of the SUV, and two teenagers walked behind the car, and one said to the other, we might see some famous people here. And my youngest said to my older child, famous people? You mean like Mr. Burr, who happened to be a neighbor of ours who also worked at ESPN at the time? And here's their father, who's on hundreds of radio stations and satellite radio every night, and they think that our neighbor is famous, but not Dad. He's Dad. And again, just that shot to the ego. You're like, yeah, yep, just like Mr. Burr. And Mr. Burr is now at the Golf Channel doing quite well for himself.
Oh, good.
Yep, and we see him all the time on TV and still friends. But yes, that was another one of those moments that I said, well, yep, my kids like what I do.
I have a feeling if they haven't yet, they will at some point recognize it. It's hard to get out of that perspective of dad, when it's your dad. The kids, for those who don't know, ESPN is owned by Disney. Mm-hmm. That came about in the mid to late 90s. And so as a cast member, there are certain perks that we as employees have at Disney. My mother-in-law is a snowbird and spends her winters in Orlando, so we go down and visit, and we have the opportunity often to go to Disney. That's how the kids perceive what I do. That's what they, Dad works at ESPN, they're owned by Disney, that's really cool. That's the extent of most of their thinking. That's the connection. Disney.
Yeah.